And, you know, just because I did that, now they won't let me back into the oil and lube section of Walmart. So, it's a bummer. It's a bummer. Today I'm going to be building a floating media console. We got our TV on the wall and off the TV stand, so we want something a little bit more modern. We're going to build a floating console. Now behind the television I also cut in an outlet and a pass-through for the HDMI cables. I don't want any of the wires to be seen from the front. So again, it's time to modernize this room. Finishing up with this last video of the series, let's get started. Now when designing the console, I purposely made it so that I could get everything from 1 3/4 inch sheet of plywood. What you're seeing here is actually scraps I have from another project, but this is actually the same, or just about the same as a full sheet of plywood. It's actually a little bit smaller, so you definitely can do it. It obviously will depend on what you're going to use for dimensions. So here, what I'm doing is I'm marking which pieces I want to go where, because obviously, like for the front and the top, I want the best pieces of plywood to be used there. Oh, I have to plug it in. That's right. That's better. So again, I'm just cutting everything to size for my dimensions, cutting the fronts and the backs, tops and the bottoms. You can see I'm going to be using a miter cut here. So I just picked up this track saw. Makes it a lot easier for doing these longer pieces. It'd be hard to run this thing through a table saw. So I'm cutting 45-degree angles here so everything matches up. You can see I'm cutting both the top and the bottom at the same time here. Next, I'm laying out all my marks for the dividers that are going to be in the center of the console. These are going to help support it since it's such a long console. I want to have some support in the middle. These will not come all the way to the front, so that if you needed to, you could still run things in front of it. But I'm just marking it out here for my router. I'm using the track from my track saw here for a straight edge. Obviously, you can use anything here as long as it's straight. Now I'm cutting about a 1/2 inch recess with my router bit here so that the dividers can slide right in. So I'm doing both the top and the bottom at the same time. That way I know everything is in line. And I'm taking shallow passes here, maybe a 1/4 inch at a time, until I get to right around half inch or so. This is a test piece of the plywood I'm using, and I just want to make sure that it's solid and I'm right on line there. Now I'm doing the other side. Again, I'm doing 2 dividers in the middle. Alright, so here's the mock-up. I have a couple of 2x4s just to hold it kind of in place. This is similar to what it's going to look like. Here I'm cutting the back panel. Now for a few pocket holes. This is the back piece that's going to go against the wall. And you can see I've marked out where the outlets kind of fall within there, just to make sure that the pocket holes aren't running where I need to cut out any voids to allow the outlets to be shown. So this clamp I picked up from Harbor Freight. It works perfect for this little Craig jig. As the date I'm recording this shows, it's $30 for the actual Craig clamp for this. I picked this up at Harbor Freight. I think it was $7. Save yourself some cash. I'm adding pocket holes to the sides here. I don't want any hardware to be shown from the outside of the console. Does anybody else do this in their rafters? Let me know in the comments below. So you remember those slots we routed in for the center divider? These pieces here are those dividers, and since the rounder leaves a rounded edge, I'm cutting a notch in the boards so that they slide over and cover those rounded edges. It'll look like a perfect fit. You'll see here in a second, but you won't see that recess we made with the router. You'll have a better view. Hold on one second. Wait for it. Look at that. That's what I'm saying. Nice snug fit. And once I pound this into place, you'll see that notch is completely hidden. Perfect. Next up is attaching the back to the bottom piece. You'll see I have one strip there that sets that back panel in exactly where I need it to go because I don't want it flush with the back. And then I have another scrap piece. Actually, it's the top that I'm using, but you'll see it leaves just enough of the 3/4 inch for exactly where I want that back panel to go. Adding some glue here. And the reason why I don't want it flush to the back is I'm using a French cleat style to hang this onto the wall. So I need to be able to add in that French cleat back section here. So you'll see, slide it right into place. It's exactly 3/4 of an inch from the back.
Excellent.
Next.
Excellent.
Next.
Exactly.
Go!
And now it's time for everyone's favorite segment, Just the Tip. So for all that pesky glue squeeze out, use a straw. You can bend the end, it makes a little bit of a wedge, slide it along your glue line, and it works pretty good. Here again, you can see how that divider fits in there. So what I'm doing is I'm just dry fitting it right now, making sure everything looks good before I add the wood glue here. And remember, I do the screw ups so you don't have to. No, but when I was using the router here to make these recesses, the router got a little squirrely with me on the end. I didn't hold it tight enough. So I'm just using some wood filler here to fill in that gap. You won't notice it. This is going to be stained. Everything will be hidden. Yep. I forgot to notch out the top piece for the same effect I did on the bottom, and it's already glued in. It's actually not that big of a deal, but in the moment, you know. So all I really need to do is I'm just transferring the same measurements I used on the bottom to the top here. Grab the Japanese pole saw and make short work of this. It's funny that like when you're in a project, and especially if you're working with wood glue and your things are set up, and how you can overreact to things. I do this all the time. I mean, you see how simple this fix was. If you have any good stories of how something similar happened to you, definitely put them in the comments. I love reading about this stuff. I want to make sure I'm not the only idiot out there. And with a little persuasion, that is how the top is supposed to fit. Here's another shot of how we make that cut, and it just simply hides that whole recess that we made for this. Next up is some layout lines for the hinges I'm using. I'm using those Euro style hinges you can see here. Everything stays inside, you won't be able to see anything. These are also soft close, so it'll be a nice touch.
So I know I'm featuring some Craig stuff in this video, but I am not sponsored. Take a look down here. If you're looking at right when this comes out, I have 74 subscribers. I don't have sponsors. I'm not getting paid to do any of this stuff. These are just things I like to use. This actual Craig drill here, this guide, I borrowed it from a friend. And you can do that too. You know, if you have friends that you're into woodworking, maybe they have tools that you can use, but this thing's really cool. You set it to where it matches your hinges that you bought, and it, like I said, it's really simple to use. Those are 2 little guide holes for the screws that go in, automatically lined up for you using that jig. It's great. Anytime you're working with these tiny little screws like this, just barely snug them. If you go too far, these things will strip out so easy. Really, you should just be using a hand tool for this, a screwdriver. But just take your time, you'll be fine. I bought these bad boys on Amazon. I think it was $8 for 3 of them, 3 different sizes. It's just a guide with a drill bit in it. It keeps your drill centered on the hole. These are great for hinges. In retrospect, I wish I bought something a little bit better. These, you know, again, you get what you pay for. When you're drilling with these, they fill up with all the drill shavings and they just jams up. It's not great, but they work. Again, just when drilling these little screws in here, just go real slow and just snug them up. Here I'm testing out the soft close feature so you can see how slow it closes. But Rick, you already cut the 45-degree angles on those long pieces. Yeah, I know. These are actually the side pieces. Cutting the 45s first. I'm doing this one here on the track saw, again, because it's such a long piece, but once you have it cut down to size, I just add the 45-degree here on the miter saw. After you stroke it, make sure it's good. You can see it fits perfectly into place. Just have to trim off the end there. Nice bead of glue here, secure the top on. Once I got that glued up, just wipe off the excess, and now I'm going to add in all those pocket holes to secure it in. I'm not going to show you that. You've seen pocket holes being drilled. Here I'm using blue painter's tape. I'm just getting it ready. After I glue on the sides here, this will help keep it in place while it dries. Everything's all glued up. Let it sit for an hour or two, let it dry. Now I'm on to cutting out all the recesses, the holes for all the outlets that are going to be in the back of it. Now I'm cutting a 45-degree angle on this piece, and this is going to become the cleat that goes in the back. I'll need 2 of these, one for the wall and obviously one for the console. I wanted to show this real quick. See this gap here? To close the gap, and I'm sorry I didn't show it, but you just take the edge of a screwdriver and just kind of run it along the side of that and it'll close the fibers up. It works great. Now what I'm doing is I'm cutting out these. This is the cleat that's going to go on the back of the console. I can't have it run the whole width because of the outlets holes. You would see the cleat. So what I'm doing is I'm cutting the sections, and you'll see it'll fit in. Like there's a section, and then you have obviously the outlet. So you can see how I just cut sections of the cleat up to make them fit. Pre-drilling all the holes. I don't want this stuff to crack as I'm drilling it in. And now to give everything a good sand. Being plywood, I'm just starting at 120 and then working up to 220. You don't want to go too much because obviously the layers of the plywood, if you go down too deep, you'll expose the underlayer. Don't want that. Now I'm just taking off all the hardware, getting it ready for stain. But before we stain, it's time to put on some edge banding. Grab an iron, put it on the highest setting you can get it. Get it nice and hot. So this edge banding you can buy, I bought this on Amazon. It's got a sticky back, but it's heat activated. So right now I'm basically just making all the sections that I need, pre-cutting them, getting them all ready. Now, if you buy some decent stuff and not the cheapest stuff you can find on Amazon, it goes on pretty well. Once it's dry, I'm using this scrap piece to help prevent it from peeling off as I'm putting pressure on it. That's my hat getting in the way, but you can see I'm just grabbing a razor blade, scoring it, and then just snap it. Instead of fighting with this stuff from falling off the edge you need it to be on, use some painter's tape, just hold it in place, attach it with the iron, and just move it along as you go. And then what I do is I just grab that tape and put it back on just to keep it down. So here, I'm just using 220. Now go very, very lightly here. You'll see the direction I'm going in. You want to be pushing it down. If I was going the other way, it would pull it back up. We don't want that. So I'm just breaking all the edges. A lot of times when you buy edge banding, it's just slightly bigger than like 3/4 inch. That way you can just sand it down. Now you'll see again here, the direction I'm going, I'm pulling towards the wood because I don't want to pull it away from it. It'll, obviously pull it off. So I desperately need a clamp rack. I basically take my clamps and I hang them on a pipe that hangs over my head, and one fell off and bumped its head. No, but you can see the gouge it made, and this is the top, which you're gonna see. So grab a water bottle, spray it down, use your iron. When the iron helps evaporate the water, it actually pulls the fibers back up to where they need to be. They kind of have like a memory. Sand it down a few times, and it's virtually gone. You could see, worked pretty well. Now I'm getting ready to stain, so make sure if you're using a mask here, make sure you put on the right filters.
When staining, I really like to use these. It's basically like a sponge with just wrapped in terry cloth, but they work real well. Pretty cheap too. And I've picked a spot in the back of the console that you won't see because basically I want to test out, make sure that the stain is the right color. You know, and once you get the okay from the wife, you're good to go. Then the only thing left to do is reattach all your hardware and mount it on your wall. There's plenty of videos to show you that French cleat system, so go check them out. Now, my original intention was to show you how I did all my trim work, but it's a pretty lengthy process and there are plenty of videos out there. Maybe one day I'll make one for you, but you can see this is the traditional oak finish, and what we decided to do was go with a more modern look, so I replaced it all with 1x3. And I'm not going to show you cutting it and painting it, but here's a quick tip. After you've painted it, just put a small piece of painter's tape and then nail through that. Once you put the putty on and it dries, you only have to paint that one section. Now, of course, all the inside of the windows needed to be sanded down and painted as well. But you don't need to see all that, so through the magic of editing, and with the console and the trim complete in the room, that wraps up this series. This was the third video, so if you just popped in for this one, I really suggest you go back and watch the first one. I show you how to put in a vinyl plank floor. Save money, do it yourself, don't need to hire anybody. It's simple, it just takes a little bit of time. The second video, I show you how to do a feature wall. I did shiplap. Again, you don't have to hire someone. You don't have to go and buy those special shiplap boards. I have a big box store. You can just do it with some plywood, and I show you how to do that. This last video was the console, trim. I revealed the whole room. I hope you enjoy it. I know my wife enjoys it, so that's a win in my book. Again, don't be discouraged about some of the tools I used. I think I give you some tips mostly on how you can use a cheaper tool and a different way of doing it, so don't get discouraged, but you can transform a whole room. You can do it yourself by just doing a couple of things, a couple of updates. I really hope you enjoyed this series. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell, which is the notifications, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for stopping by.